Welcome back to another preview series. We are going to talk about the running backs. Heading into fall camp, we're going to name the best player of this group. I'm very excited, very curious to see your answers here because we've not talked about this, as well as we're going to talk about the breakout player of this group and the top true freshman. I think there's going to be there could be some differences in our opinions here. We've not talked about this before, so let's get right into it. But first, let's talk about who do you think is the best running back in the group heading into fall practice?
Yeah, so best is an interesting, you could define it a lot of ways, right? I'll define it as talented and I'll go with Don Chaney Jr. I think he's got the best combination of size, speed, home run hitting ability. Still has to prove himself after a freshman season that was a little up and down or slow to start, I guess is a better way to say it. But I will define best as talented. Um, and so I go with Don Chaney Jr., but he's certainly not the most proven of the group.
So best can certainly go different ways. And I was pretty adamant last year about my opinion on Cameron Harris. I know a lot of fans were excited about Don Chaney, obviously, reasonably so, and same way with Jaylan Knighton. But look, Cam was the best running back last year, most productive. Heading into fall practice, I expect him to be the number one back heading into it. We'll see how it goes. However, I'm going to take this a different route, and I'm going to say I'm going to stick to what I thought last year. I think the best running back of this group is Jaylan Knighton. My reasons for that is because I believe he can really add some things in the passing game. I really like his speed, his breakaway speed, and that's where I really think he separates from the other two. But we could, I understand the Don Chaney Jr. aspect. I understand Cam Harris as well because he's been the most productive and he's the oldest veteran guy, and we've seen him have the big games. You saw how he started out the last year, and it's not really a slight on Cam at all. I think he's got
No,
ability too, and I think if they make him the feature back, I think they'll be fine. I
yeah,
think if they go with Don, it's just depends on which route they want to go. For me, again, I like Jalen's ability to catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit. I think he's got a
right.
little bit more elusive ability, and I like that speed. I think he's the fastest of the group, so I'd go ahead and go with Jalen.
I think just judging off of last year, I think Jaylen is an interesting take, right? Because Don had productive games in those final two games, right? But I think one of the interesting what ifs in the running back position is what if Jaylan Knighton didn't sustain that shoulder injury against Duke, which was a game he started, right? He started that game. I think he sustained the injury after 2 carries. So he didn't really get to show what he could do in that starter role. Um, I think that tells you kind of what the Miami coaching staff thinks of him, that he started over Don um, as freshman. Now I do think Don made a move in the spring before he sustained an injury himself, and Jaylan Knighton was the guy who showed out in the spring game. So you're exactly right. I mean, Miami can't go wrong with any of those top three guys. I I think what you're getting at, and I would agree. I would not be surprised if Cam Harris is the starter against Alabama. I think he's earned that opportunity to show what he can do, and if he produces, he's going to be the starter for as long as he can produce. Um, but I think the leash, it's going to be a shorter leash this year, and if he doesn't produce, then the other two guys will get plenty of opportunities to show what they can do.
And I want you to explain more about Don Chaney here in a second, and about his abilities, what you like about him. And one of the things I said in the spring was I just felt like it was really going to be Don Chaney Jr. to be that focal point of the. It felt like it was going to be his, so I would not be surprised if he won the
Yeah,
job. If he is their best running back, I would not be surprised. I feel like his injury with his shoulder, the surgery, I feel like that's setting him back a little bit.
sure.
And I think that that's something that has me a little bit more. I have a little bit more pause on him taking over,
Agreed.
necessarily. But I talked to Deron Thomas. If you guys haven't seen the video, check that out. But he thought, and I think a lot of people think like this about Don Chaney Jr. And maybe that's what you're saying. He thinks he's got a chance to be special,
Yeah.
because of that combination. So, talk a little bit more about Don Chaney Jr. What do you like about him, and essentially, what is it about him that he's got a chance?
Yeah, I think what we saw from Don last year, during the course of that freshman season, you could see him trying to figure out what it meant to run with patience and vision that's required at the college level, right? In high school, he could kind of outrun everyone to the corner and hit the sideline and go. Um, in college, you got to kind of set up your blocks a little bit more. And I think we saw that as the season progressed. You mentioned Jaylan is a threat in the passing game, which he is more of a threat than Don. But Don made some plays in the passing game as well, just as a little dump outlet on some balls, I think in that Oklahoma State game, the bowl game. So, I think he is an all around back as well. And yeah, I just think the physical gifts, along with the developing vision and patience, puts him, in my opinion, talent wise above the other two. My issue with Cam, he's a big, strong, sturdy back, and once he has a lane to hit full speed, he's gone. My issue with Cam is I don't know about the vision. Um, I just wish the vision slash patience was a little bit better. And if he does take those steps this year, he will probably be the starter. So it'll be interesting to see how he does with that development.
And just for clarification, make sure we get this out of the way. But breakout player, I think in this group you're going with Don. Obviously, if he's a starter,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I'm going to take Jaylan. So let's switch it. Top true freshman. This is a little bit interesting. Again, we haven't talked about this. So I'm curious which route you're going to go. Who's the best true freshman running back in this group here?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, I mean, I haven't seen him in person because he's from Georgia, right? But I'm a big fan of Cody Brown's film, at least. Quite frankly, he is like, in terms of stylistically, I like the style of running back that he is. I keep talking about patience, but I feel like he has good vision. He can get downhill in a hurry, and he's tough to tackle. And I think that style of running back in a spread offense that spreads out a defense and requires linebackers and guys in the back seven, safeties to come up and try and bring down big physical running backs. I like that fit. And, I don't know if Cody Brown's going to get many opportunities or this year, uh, but I tend to like him a little bit more than Thad this year. I'll be honest. Like I'm a big Thad fan, um, but the fact that he's reported at 240 pounds, to me that's a little too big. I'd like to see him more in that 225-ish range, and so that'll be something interesting to monitor here in his first year at UM, if he can kind of get that weight down a little bit.
I'm with you. My top freshman is Cody Brown, and I really like the balance that he runs with. And I hate doing so many comparisons with guys, but I think of like a style, not necessarily body size at all because he's bigger, but I think of like a Maurice Jones-Drew in terms of just his compact ability with his balance. And Maurice, again, he's smaller than Cody, and there were certain explosive plays that he was obviously able to make at the college and pro level, but just that compact balance, the lower half, I guess, is what I'm looking at. But
Sure.
you know, and I am with you. I think the opportunities will be a little bit more difficult for the top freshmen. But we'll see how these guys develop in the future and stay with it. I think as a group, the running backs. So Miami ninth in the ACC in rushing last year. Improvement
Yeah.
from 14th. But I know with Coach Lashley, he wants that number higher. And I think
Right.
when you have three running backs that you really like, in addition to those young talented guys, but you're expecting these three guys to lead the way, they've got to be higher than ninth. And I know, especially when you got a quarterback that runs the ball, you're looking at these factors, and you're
Right.
like, well, why are they not top five? They really should be in that top three range. And I think that's should be a realistic goal. You have an experienced offensive line. Certainly, they're going to have to play their part. But is that realistic? Can they make that big of a
Yeah.
jump in the ACC standings?
I think it is realistic. I don't know about you, but I put a lot of those struggles, and look, backs, you got to figure it out, somewhat, right? No matter what your offensive line is doing. But I do think, look, Miami was what I think the second worst Power Five team in tackles for loss allowed last year. And to me, that's kind of like an offensive line stat. Um, and so I think a year older, a year stronger, even some new personnel mixed in there with Navon Donaldson coming back. Maybe we see Justice Aluation, the UNLV transfer, in there more at the other guard spot, maybe Jalen Rivers, etc. I think the push up front should be a little better. We'll see. But yeah, I do think if they can eliminate the tackles for loss and get better in those short yardage situations. I feel like so many times they couldn't convert, third and threes, third and twos, um, then yeah, I think, things start running downhill in this no huddle offense. And that allows you to kind of pop some bigger runs too.
And speaking of pop up bigger runs, this kind of goes to my point I want to make is just, when I said Jaylan Knight, look, Jaylen, he's got speed and ability. He's got to produce better than he did a year ago. I think
Sure.
I think he only had one run over 20 yards, if I'm not mistaken. I think Don only had two. I
Yeah.
think those were the numbers they finished with. Apologize for if those are off, but either way, both of them have to be better in that area. I think Cameron Harris has the ability to have runs too, and I think that's why I like the running back group as a whole. All three of those guys because they do have that ability to really um, gain some yards in chunk plays. Certainly, offensive line, like I said, well, like you said, like is definitely going to matter. Um, I think it's going to be very interesting heading into fall camp because Coach Lashley has said, look, they want to feature back. That's pretty well
Right.
known. But now he's got to make that decision, and it's going to be hard because however, whatever you think of one running back, you still have to respect those other two because they've got ability
Yeah.
too. And I think it's going to be a lot harder of a decision to make than what they say, especially that first week because however the game's going to go, it feels like it's going to be hard to see how Miami's going to really run the ball with a huge yardage total.
Right.
Obviously, you'd like that, but it's hard to predict that. So then, what do you do? Do you go off a different guy? And if they don't run the ball the first game, so it's going to be very interesting to who they decide to go with. But year two for those guys, Don and Jaylen, and another year of experience for Cam. You're expecting better things. So we'll definitely see how this goes, and very curious to see if these running backs, the freshmen, if they can find a role at all in this offense this year. But again, certainly looking ahead to the future with both of those guys.
Yeah, we'll find out in a hurry if this run game is good, right? Because if you produce against Alabama, who on paper probably has the best front seven in the country, um, if they run for yards, if the backs get loose against this Alabama defense, then we will know they are good. Now, if Miami is shut down in the run game, I'm not sure what we'll really learn other than Alabama's really good, which we already do. But yeah, we'll find out in a hurry if this run game is good, maybe even great. So I'm looking forward to finding out those answers.
So definitely we'll wrap that up. You're definitely expecting bigger things out of the run game, got that experience and the ability and talent. All the combinations are looking good for Miami's running backs heading into fall practice, heading into the season.